Hello everyone, Fallen Chameleon here, and I'm going to walk you through another forge today. Alright, start off with Sandstorm, units can't fly, draw a card. This can be useful in a time deck that has ground units. You can pick off opposing flyers by casting it on the opponent's turn when they attack, brings them to the ground. It's a pretty decent card. Seeroff's Beacon. 3 cost. When you attack with 3 or more units, play a Justice Sigil from your deck depleted, and summon, you get a District Infantry. This card I don't pick very highly as a first pick. It's going to be performing very well in some kind of like a Combre aggro, as long as you have a bunch of aggressive units, but we don't know that we're going to be able to get a synergy like that put together. So I don't really want to take it first. We have Outland Sniper, 2/2 for 4. Summon, deal 2 damage. This is a really good card. It's been around since set 1. Can pick off a flyer, pick off an aggressive unit. This is a card I'm very comfortable first picking. Wisdom of the Elders. I've talked about this in my last video. This is not really a card I want to pick very highly. I want to be proactive as often as I can in draft. Draft and Forge, limited environment. It's a card that gets better late game, but again, not that highly pick. Rampage, give a unit +3/+1 and Overwhelm. This is a pretty okay combat trick. A lot of the time, it can be difficult as far as getting like a 2-for-1, just because they're only having 1 health. Buff, but it can definitely help you push through for damage, and occasionally you can get really good value out of it. Not a great trick, but it's definitely decent enough. Scorpion Wasp, 1/1 deadly for 1. This card is not particularly, or not Scorpion Wasp rather. Scorpion Wasp is a different card. This is just Scorpion, 1/1 deadly for 1. Not really good enough. Deadly blockers are useful in Forge. The AI will struggle to attack into it a little bit, but again, it's not really applying much pressure as a 1/1. Not a card I really want to pick that highly. And it also commits us into Praxis very early. We don't know necessarily what we're going to get there. That's very much a secondary consideration. But I'm happy to just pick a trick right now. Pick the Rampage. We have Pyro Elemental. Costs 4 less if you have played a spell this turn. This card can be pretty hard to set up in Forge. We don't always have enough spells to be able to get it out early. We have Oathkeeper's Hammer. 2/2 weapon with lifesteal for 6. Not a great stat line, but can definitely help you race. And I think likely going to be a little bit better than Pyro Elemental. Ancient Bauble is just, maybe if we had enough Relic synergy or if we had lifesteal synergy, but we're not likely to get that in Praxis, so we're not going to pick Bauble. I think we'll just go with the Hammer, test out Rakano. Aerialist Kopesh, 3/3 weapon for 6. Wield gets flying this turn. This is a pretty mediocre weapon, but there is a new card. What is it called? It's a 4/4 flying for 6 with Renown. Play a relic weapon with attack and health equal to the cost of the weapon. So the larger cost weapons actually do go up a little bit in value if you can pick up that card. It's an uncommon. Or we have Heavy Axe, which is a little bit more of an efficient weapon. Grandfather's Axe, again, is a little bit better if you have Renown synergies. And being in a Rakano, we have potential for that to happen. So that can be useful. These are not cards I particularly am in love with. I think given that we already have a 1/6 cost weapon though, I'm just going to pick the grandfather's axe over the heavy axe, just on the off chance that we're able to get into some kind of renown deck. This is kind of a not really a pick I'm pleased to see early on, at least. Okay, Smith's Hammer, +2/+0, overall weapon is just a fair weapon, not really anything impressive. District Infantry is a solid 1-drop, can hit for a lot of damage. And then we have Barrel Through, give a unit +3/+3 this turn. It'll fix for our fire influence. And anytime you can pick up a good efficient combat trick against the AI, I definitely highly recommend it. This will be able to potentially lead to 2 or even 3-for-1 blowouts, and I'm going to pick it higher than District Infantry. Rallying Banner, once per turn you may pay 2 to give one of your units +1/+1 this turn for each of your units. So if we have, for example, 3 units, pay 2, give one of your units +3/+3, that actually is pretty decent. That's going to let us, it's a lot of a power commitment up front, but it's definitely something that can help us push a good amount of damage. And we have Ruckus Rouser, 2/2 for 4, Renown. You get power this turn equal to double the cost of that speller weapon. So yeah, if we were to play Oathhammer on it, you get a ton of power, but we don't know how much top end there really is going to be able to pull that off. And the 2/2 for 4 is really poor stat line. We have Axe Sharpener, 2/3 for 2, very respectable stat line in Forge, and limited in general. And Tomb, create and draw a copy of each weapon Axel's wielding. This is going to be our pick here. Very solid 2-drop. Daze, kind of a mediocre stun effect. Rally, units get +2 attack this turn. Really is only going to be good if you have a very wide board of like a number of cheap units. I don't know that we're going to have that set up. I think more likely we're going to be in kind of a Renown build. Endure, give one of your units invulnerable to damage this turn. This would be really good if it were a fast spell, just because it's a free Renown trigger, as well as it would have been a good combat trick, but since you have to cast it pre-combat, that's not going to do as much for us. And I think we'll just pick Daze. Maybe we can catch the AI off guard with it. Aerial Spotter, 2/1 flying for 4. Renown, play 3/2 Article Soldier. So this seems like it's a very poor stat line, but you can do cool things like play a barrel through on it, block with something, get the 3/2 on your opponent's turn, block with that. So it's actually a pretty decent card. Holds a weapon well as well. Then we have Dusthoof Brawler, 5/3 overall per 5 is pretty underwhelming as far as cards go. It's just not a great stat line to have 3 health. You're trading with 3 drops, sometimes even 2 drops. We have Grounded Acolyte, 2/1 for 3. Someone play a 2-attack Iron Sword, which does, it's a weapon, so it does trigger Renown. This is just a really solid card in general. Gets better if you have flyers or overwhelm units, but just generally for Renown units as well, this is going to be a really good card. It's always been a good card in Limited, and I think it's especially good in Rakano decks in Defiance Limited environment. Aerial Spotter, talked about that one last pick. Pyre Adept, 3/1 for 2. It's a fine 2-drop, nothing really impressive. Definitely something. If we were later and we didn't have any 2-drops, I would definitely want to be picking that to make sure that we have a respectable curve. But for now, I think given that we have something like Granite Acolyte, I want to get a couple of the Renown cards if I can. Pick up a flyer. So I think I'm going to take the Spotter. Worn Shield, Again, yeah, it does trigger Renown, but 0-3 weapon for 1 is just not really anything impressive. Talked about Duskhoof Brawler. Here's Kozo Diplomat, 1-1 for 2. Summon Silence another unit. So that's not really a stat line that really does much, but Silence is always useful, for sure. Compare that to 2-cost spell Silence and Stun a unit. You don't get to have the stun. You're trading a 1-1, basically a 1-1 chump blocker. I don't value that one particularly high. And we're still very early. We have plenty of time to pick up some more removal, I would say. I don't think we need to be picking that right now. Particularly when we have Fireheart Recruit as one of the options. Through and Quick Draw for 3 was Pledge is really good. Quick Draw allows us to attack pretty easily, and Pledge are always useful in Forge. Make sure you don't get stuck on 2 and just lose to the AI for something like that. But yeah, if this card were on more of the level of Duskhoof Brawler, I would definitely pick the Diplomat. Or if we were later on and didn't have any removal, I'd probably pick Diplomat. Spitfire. 4-cost Relic, pay 4 to deal 1 damage to an enemy. This is very inefficient for what it does, and there aren't a ton of things that are susceptible to pings. And we don't have Relic Synergy. I don't think we need Spitfire. Town Watchman, 3/7 Warcry for 6. Very much a blocking stat line. Very inefficient as a 6-drop. Not really a great unit. Guerrilla Fighter, also not particularly solid. 3/2 Warcry for 4. The summon can be helpful if you're aggressive enough and can help you push damage, that sort of thing. We're not that aggressive right now. I think it's pretty close between these two picks. With Oathkeeper's Hammer, already at 6, I think we'll just pick a 4-drop. Magmatic Sentinel, 8-cost, 7/5, summon, deal 5 damage to an enemy unit. This is actually surprisingly decent as far as 8-cost units go. 8 is a whole lot to hit though, very difficult to hit. Not something I pick particularly high, but you know, the games actually in Forge can often go very late. That's just the way the format has been, as far as I can tell, in about a dozen or so runs I've done. So it's definitely a card we could consider. Hellfire Rifle, another 6-cost weapon, deals 3 to enemy player. It does trigger Renown, but we already have one 6-cost weapon. This is not a good stat line, just generally not that great a card. I'd probably pick Smith's Hammer a little bit higher than it. But again, I think it's just good to just pick up the big late game right now, when the other options are pretty mediocre. Alright, Fledgling. Always a respectable 3/3 flying for 5. That's always a reasonable option. Oni Forge Master. This is a really good 2-drop, 2/2 for 2. Renown, create and draw a +2/+1 weapon. And of course, we're going to have to pick between that and a very premium combat trick, Finest Hour, which is even better than Barrel Through. This is really unfortunate. We are going to need early units. This is a nice one, for sure. But I just don't think in Forge we can really ever pass the Finest Hour. Just such a good combat trick. Talon of Nostrix. And then, here's Rebuke was the card I was talking about. So, Kozo Diplomat versus Rebuke. Both 2-cost. Both can only be played slow speed on your own turn. Both are silence. So you're picking between essentially a stun and a 1/1 body. I actually think Rebuke is likely a little bit better, but Talon of Nostrix is a pretty decent 2-cost removal. Can get through early aggressive units. Can pick off some flyers. And neither of these are particularly great cards. We're just going to take the Talon. Another Guerrilla Fighter, Grandfather's Axe, or Kronish Deserter. Kronish Deserter, 1 extra health. Both have Warcry, cost 1 less. This is way better card than Guerrilla Fighter. And we already have 1 Grandfather Axe. They're pretty clunky. I really don't want multiples. I'm very happy to take Deserter. Mithril Mace is a pretty good relic weapon. 3/4 for 5 kills a lot of flying units that could get in the way. Sometimes you can just pick off pesky jump blockers on the ground, whatever it may be. Temper, not the greatest removal spell. There's only a few things that the ping actually can kill. Obviously it's good against 1-drops, it's good against like Vainglory Patrol, but overall this is just not the greatest removal. Softfoot Burglar, you play a spell, gets +1/+1 this turn. Renown, great and draw a treasure trove. This is actually a decent early game. We have a couple of spells, but more likely than not, we're not going to want to just use them on a burglar early, I don't think. We're probably going to want to save it till a later game to be able to break through board stalls and get better value. We don't have a whole lot of early weapons as well. And I think Mithril Mace is just a little bit better removal-wise, but this would be a pretty good card for the deck though as well. But we're going to take the Mace. Unmoored Valkyrie, 1/1 flying for 1 Renowned Lifesteal. Minotaur Grunt, 1/3 Warcry for 2. And Surveil, 5/2 Pledge for 4. This is actually, pledges are really good in Gauntlet, in Forge, for sure. But this is definitely one of the weakest stat lines. And, we don't have anything with the Sentinel synergy. Minotaur Grunt is a very solid 2-drop. Unmoored Valkyrie, 1/1 flying for 1 is a little weak, for sure. If we had a little bit more weapons, the Renowned Lifesteal trigger is definitely nice, but Minotaur Grunt is just all around always going to be a good 2-drop. It's going to be very consistent. It's not going to need to be specifically, to have weapons specifically played on it, whereas Unmoored Valkyrie, obviously, it can be great when it is, but it's not going to be as consistent as the Minotaur Grunt. Pistol Whip, spell, 4 cost, 1 units, +2/+2, and stun an enemy unit. This would be pretty great if it were a fast spell, but as slow, it's just way too clunky, and the AI isn't going to fall for a trick that it sees ahead of time. Fireman Cub, 1/1 for 1. There aren't that many things that the ping benefits from, and Whirling Duo is just absolutely great. 3/3 for 3 with charge and lifesteal. That's a very premium 3-drop. We're going to pick it. Oni Forge Master. Warn Shield. Warn Shield is pretty terrible. Again, yeah, triggers Renown. Makes a blocker. That's about all. The Fireheart Recruit is good. Definitely very good. But we got enough 3-drops right now. And Oni Forge Master is one of the better 2-drops that we can actually get. 2/2 for 2 is respectable, and the Renown actually gives us a very nice weapon. Okay, talked about Temper. Magmatic Sentinel. I really don't want to pick multiples of this though, because 8 can really get stuck in your hand, and it will just take the Loyal Watchwing. It's not great, but Flying Warcry does hold a weapon. Again, I think Magmatic Sentinel is a little bit better between the two overall, but there's only so many 8-drops you want to have in your deck. Twin Barrel, those are 3-drop, 3-cost weapon. Decent on a flyer, but if you look at what our flyers are right now, Loyal Watchwing, Aerial Spotter, none of them have particularly high attack, so it's not going to be that great anyway. Obviously, doesn't do much for blocking. We got Seraph's Beacon. Again, looking at our setup, we don't really have necessarily a 3 or more attack going to happen very often. And then Centaur Raid Leader, 4/4 for 5 with charge. Top unit of your deck gets charged. This is a very reasonable all-around 5-drop and fits into our curve very nicely. We'll pick that. Civic Peacekeeper, 3/3 for 6. Empower, stun an enemy unit. This card can be decent. Not a great blocker. But part of the problem is with a 6-drop like this, though, is that there's only going to be 9 power left in our deck by the time we play that. So you're not going to get that many stuns overall by the time this comes out. Town Watchman, comparatively, obviously doesn't have that Empower, but the 7 health does let you gum up the ground as a blocker. So it has that immediate impact of being able to hold back like a 6/6, for example, where a Civic Peacekeeper does not. Meltdown, 0-cost spell, kill an enemy attachment. That's just not going to consistently do enough for us. Sometimes it would be great, other times it just isn't going to get enough value. We'll just pick the Watchman here. Pyro Elemental, again, we don't have that many spells that we're going to be playing on the turn to be able to just attack with this. Endure, slow speed, we've talked about this card. Yeah, it triggers Renown, but that's about all it's really going to do for us. And Aerial Spotter, I'm pretty happy to just pick up another flyer and get a nice Renown trigger. Maybe we even get to catch the AI off guard with a surprise Argentport Soldier. Astromancer's Compass, once per turn you may pay 2, give one of your units +1/+1 this turn. This card is not all that effective, particularly without Relic Synergy. It just doesn't do that much for us. Renegade Valkyrie, flying double damage, 1/2 for 4. This is a card that really holds a weapon well. Obviously, anytime you increase that attack, double damage, pushing tons of damage for you. And we have a couple weapons. We have Oathkeeper's Hammer, so that would be 6 double damage lifesteal, which would be pretty great. And we have Granite Acolyte as well. This is overall a very strong card. Over Fledgling is just an all-around reasonable 3/3 flying for 5. But we're going to take the Valkyrie. It's just a little bit stronger. And now we are looking at our rare option. So I think for this deck, being Renown, far and away the best fit is going to be Shogun Scepter. But collection-wise, I don't have any Kozo Elite. I have 1. Weapons that can be played on units are fast. Maybe we can catch them off guard a little bit with something like that. Hojan is also going to be really good. That's a great 2-drop. Terrific 2-drop. I have plenty of those though. Alright. I gotta take this for my collection. But yeah. I do think Shogun Scepter is probably the correct pick, specifically for this deck, just because we have a few Renown units and a few units that really flying units that benefit from a weapon. Hojan would also be really great though, for sure. And yeah, I think it's very close between these two, honestly. Hojan is a little bit better for the curve. But yeah, we're gonna take Kozo Elite just for my collection, and maybe we'll be able to do something fun in the video. play Oathkeeper's Hammer, surprising them. Alright, so that's it for the picks, and stand by for the games.